I'm always looking for ways to show my cat how much I love her. And with Fancy Feast gems, I can pamper her whenever I want with a savory gravy on top of a gourmet mousse pâté. The pyramid shape makes serving simple, so all I have to do is peel and plate to make mealtime feel extra fancy. And with 2 entrees in every pack, it's easy to turn every day into the extraordinary. Fancy Feast gems.
Mint is still $15 a month for premium wireless. And if you haven't made the switch yet, here are 15 reasons why you should. 1, it's $15 a month. 2, seriously, it's $15 a month. 3, no big contrast. 4, I use it. 5, my mom uses it. Are you playing me off? That's what's happening, right? Okay, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, $15 per month equivalent required. New customer offer first 3 months only. Then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
At Blinds.com, it's not just about window treatments. It's about you, your style, your space, your way. Whether you DIY or want the pros to handle it all, you'll have the confidence of knowing it's done right. From free expert design help to our 100% satisfaction guarantee, everything we do is made to fit your life and your windows. Because at Blinds.com, the only thing we treat better than windows is you. Visit Blinds.com now for up to 45% off site-wide, plus a professional measure at no cost. Rules and restrictions apply.
Tito's Handmade Vodka is America's favorite vodka for a reason. From the first legal distillery in Texas, Tito's is 6 times distilled till it's just right. And naturally gluten-free, making it a high-quality spirit that mixes with just about anything. From the smoothest martinis to the best Bloody Marys. Tito's is known for giving back, teaming up with nonprofits to serve its communities and do good for dogs. Make your next cocktail with Tito's. Distilled and bottled by 5th Generation Inc., Austin, Texas. 40% alcohol by volume. Savor responsibly.
Thanks for listening to the Red Treehouse, where I tell scary stories to keep you up at night. You can listen to the Red Treehouse wherever you stream podcasts. Just be sure to follow, like, and subscribe. Oh, and leave a 5-star review. You can follow the Red Treehouse on Instagram and Threads at Red Treehouse Pod. And you can find the Red Treehouse on Patreon, where by joining, you can receive exclusive member benefits. Simply go to patreon.com/Red Treehouse. And if you have a scary story or topic you'd like me to feature in an upcoming episode, email redtreehousepod@gmail.com. The Red Treehouse is dedicated to my dad. I love you, Pop. Let's start with a Did You Know? Hispanic Heritage Month kicked off 2 days ago on September 15th and runs for an entire month until October 15th. It's a month-long celebration of diverse and beautiful cultures, food, music, folklore, struggles, triumphs, and spooky stories. As a Puerto Rican podcaster, it's important to me that people understand Hispanic culture and heritage is not monolithic. We are all unique and worthy of respect, honor, and dignity. It's unfortunate and tragic that we live in a socio-political climate where Hispanics across the country are being vilified for simply existing. And there is a real, palpable fear within the community of being targeted simply because we have darker skin and speak another language. Though I am only one person, I intend to use my voice and platform in protest and dissent by bringing you the scariest stories from the Spanish-speaking world, including spooky folklore, hauntings, cryptids, and original short horror stories, culminating on October 15th with an original story written by me. It is both my honor and privilege to bring these stories to you over the next month. In this episode of The Red Treehouse, I'm going to read you a terrific short horror story, The Wisps, written by Puerto Rican horror author E.M. Otero. If that name sounds familiar, it's because he wrote A Voice in the Endless Dark, which I narrated back in episode 196. So sit back, turn down the lights, pull up the covers, and pay close attention as I read The Wisps by E.M. Otero. I'm your host, Will. Welcome to the Red Treehouse. The Wisps, written by E.M. Otero. New York to me was never the city. It has always been the desolate, haunted countryside, pockmarked with small rustic towns. Some were rustic like a Hallmark movie, while others were rustic in a methy kind of way. My town was nestled somewhere in between. It had its quaint little restaurants and farmers markets. It also had drug deals and car chases. Any town on Route 12, dubbed the Drug Highway, had issues. A person never knew what they were going to get. Homemade beeswax candles, or a methed up lady in a Disney moo-moo screaming at trees. Upstate New York was unpredictable, in terrain, people, and weather. It wasn't uncommon to wear a parka and shorts in the same week. I never minded the cold nor the heat. Being an ethnically ambiguous spawn of a Taino Puerto Rican and an Irish mutt, I had a hearty tolerance for a wide spectrum of weather and people. This was good for upstate New York. Living in the lands where the natives fought the white man, long after Columbus invaded the islands of my ancestors, reeked of ignored torment. The relics of genocide were still warm in the dirt. A buddy of mine's mother searched for arrowheads in the cornfields around town. She has an impressive collection. The county I lived in was the Oneida tribe's word for bull thistle. I don't know if the natives named the area that, or if the settlers did. A lot of the towns adopted the names of the people they took the land from. Susquehanna, Owego, Chemung, Tuscarora, and so on. I could never tell if it was respectful or macabre. I thought probably the latter, since the other half of everything was named after the conqueror's home, like Brisbane, Oxford, Coventry, and Norwich. Being the ambiguous half-breed, it isolated me from both sides of my heritage. I always got the, "So where is your family from?" question by white folk, when they were really asking what flavor of brown I was. Then Latinos, who were horrified by the fact I couldn't speak a lick of Spanish, referred to me as El Coco, or the coconut. Brown on the outside, white on the inside. I had definitely been called worse. The place I found peace from the cards I was dealt was the labyrinthine woods behind my mother's trailer. She owned 13 acres on the top of a hill outside of town that she won in the divorce from my father. The woods were great and vast, but also contained. If I walked far enough in one direction, there would be a road or a farmer's field. It made it impossible to get lost. It didn't keep me from trying. At 14, I had wandered and blazed so many trails in the woods, I had given guided tours. I knew every field, every abandoned orchard, and even the old, long-forgotten family graveyards. Even though I knew these woods so well, I feared them. I would always feel as though I was being watched, or hunted. My father, the avid hunter, always assured me that there was nothing in these woods that would hurt me, that everything out here was more afraid of me than I was afraid of it. I wasn't always so sure of that, and I don't think he was either. My father warned me to never whistle in the woods, ever. He never explained why, and his seriousness really unnerved me. It didn't keep me from ignoring the advice. I always had my walking stick that I made from an oak dowel, and I fastened an old bald-peen hammerhead for a handle. I fancied myself a Bartitsu practitioner, without ever having taken a lesson, of course, and only knowing what I had seen on random YouTube videos. Part of my fear of the woods came from the reoccurring dreams I had since I was a child. I dreamt that there was a light glowing deep in the woods, its source hidden below the curve of the hill. I would go out my back door and into the opening of the woods, following the glowing light. The dream would always end abruptly before I found the source. I would go months and years without thinking about it. Then it would worm its way into my anxious thoughts, making me close the blinds in my room so the woods couldn't stare in at me. That dream scared me more than the yapping howls of coyotes, or the ominous silence that would randomly befall the woods as if I had walked into a forbidden place. On a July afternoon in 2008, I was walking with my Sheltie, whom my mother named Laddie. His presence, despite being only 35 pounds and his mask being made mostly of fluff, made me feel significantly safer. I trusted his acute senses over mine. The day was hot, the kind of hot that stuck to your skin and clung to your lungs. My wife beater clung to my chest and back, despite the shade of various trees. I could always tell where I was based on the trees. There were sections where old farmers' fields had long overgrown with evergreens. Then there was the old apple orchard, surrounded by great oaks. Further in where I was now, there were some willows that sucked the moisture from a small pond. I used my stick to flip over rocks in the little creek that leaked from the pond down towards a farm on the other side of the hill. I whistled a tuneless song and pulled out caddisfly larvae from their little homes made of twigs and crayfish. Laddie pranced into the water, barking at the splashes. The entire area was wet and spongy from the recent rains. If I wasn't careful, I would lose a shoe in the muck. The mud caked Laddie's fur, turning his usual white and rusty brown fluff dark and slick. I moved on, tired of the creek, and used my walking stick to smash the brittle lower branches of massive pine trees, pretending to be a Jedi warrior fighting off stormtroopers left and right. I stopped when I felt a shift. It wasn't a change in temp despite the chill I felt, or the light, even though it seemed darker than a moment before. It didn't go quiet like in the horror books or movies. Birds still tweeted, and the peepers peeped. It felt like Laddie and I weren't alone anymore. I shivered despite the heat, and my dog got anxious, whimpering at seemingly nothing. I figured it was a good time to be getting home anyway. The woods always got dark sooner than everything else, and the peepers were announcing in their nightly chorus that the dark was on its way. Laddie and I walked at first, back the way we had come. I knew I could find my way back even as the shadows grew longer. Although I still couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, like the unsuspecting antelope in a nature documentary. The hair raised on my neck in anticipation of fangs. I told myself that Laddie would smell something off, and that this feeling was just an atavistic aversion to the dark. A bit of nyctophobia from when being picked off by large cats or wolves was a real danger. The mental gymnastics didn't make me feel any better, especially since I had misjudged the time and the woods were growing darker by the minute. Fear squirmed in the back of my mind. I knew my mother wouldn't notice I was gone, at least until tomorrow afternoon. Her transition from competent nurse to drunk was already complete for the night, and she was always gone before I woke up. I tried to smother the growing fear with a blanket of reason. I knew that if I just walked towards the setting sun, I would hit my road. It was only a half-mile at most. The fear seethed, and I figured it would take a little longer, but it would be safer to walk the road back rather than the path back through the woods. I mean, I didn't even have a flashlight. I walked towards the bruised sky, barely visible through the thick trees. Laddie followed behind eagerly. In the distance, I spotted a light peeking through the trees. I first assumed it was a porch light, even though it was too soon to be coming up on a house, but I figured maybe I misjudged where I was. I walked towards it. The strange thing was, after a certain point, it didn't get any closer. I walked for what felt like an hour, but what was probably only 15 minutes, since the last hint of the sunset was still fading. Yet the light seemed to be the same distance away, roughly 100 yards. It was hard to tell in the dark. Laddie whimpered softly, but I couldn't tell if it was because of the light or the fact it was nearly completely dark. I didn't like it, and the memory of the recurring dream flooded my mind. It wasn't the same light. It didn't radiate or glow like a spotlight in the deep woods. It was more like a lantern. It danced and moved like a flame would if carried by someone wandering in the woods. Only flames weren't whitish blue. I wondered if this was the spirit of a long-dead native that wanted to lure me to my doom, or the flame could have been the soul of someone else who had gotten lost in these woods. My mind twisted and worked morbidly. Every sound carried and echoed. The wind whispered like conspiring voices. A branch breaking was death, an arm's reach away, the bobbing light luring me to my doom. The limbs pulled and grasped at me while the roots moved to trip me. The flame of fear feasted uncontrollably. I tried to calm the spiraling flame in my mind with more reason, and walked not directly towards the light, but I put it to my left. I figured I would walk past it eventually, only it seemed to keep pace, never closer and never farther. I couldn't tell how far away it was because of how dark the moonless night had gotten. I still walked straight, knowing that there were many fields on this side of the hill. I feared irrationally that it was someone hunting me, like in the most dangerous game, or if death himself was coming, finding his way through the woods with a lantern lit by the tortured souls he claimed. I stopped, listening to the woods. Laddie growled. The sound cut through the dark and nearly caused me to jump out of my skin. The image of my father and mother holding hands appeared in front of me. A light illuminated them as if they stood on a stage. "Come on, don't you want to come with us?" my father said in a soft voice. "We love you, son, and now we are back together. Forever." I almost took a step towards them. The longing for a complete family was always in the back of my mind, but never at the forefront. Not until now. "Come on, honey. You know we love you and we will be here this time." I walked towards them. It had been nearly a decade since they broke up, and I had given up on ever having an unbroken home. I had friends who had dinners at their dining room tables with homemade meals, their parents together, their life complete and having a proper home to go to. Not me. I dreaded going home. It was empty, or a battlefield, depending on who my mother was dating. The only meals that waited for me at home had to be microwaved. This was all I ever wanted. This would make a home. Not just a shelter from the weather, but an actual home. Someplace to feel safe. Something small skittered in the damp leaf litter, away from us. The light from the stars was barely enough to allow me to see what was in front of me. That's when I remembered I was in the woods, that my mother and father weren't there. Their illusion dispersed, and the dark was consuming, except for the beacon of white-blue flame. I walked, and the light stayed. My North Star in these woods. Then I thought with dread. Maybe the light wasn't fixed in a singular direction. Maybe it was moving in circles, or meandering and luring me deeper into the woods. Between the trees, I noticed there were lockers, and every other step the leaf litter was white and red tiles. The fluorescent lights that hung from nothing below the branches flickered in no apparent rhythm. Voices called out. "Hey, you a pimp like your dad? I heard he fucked half of his workplace." Carson said he always had things to say. About my family, about my parents' work, and about the fact I didn't exactly fit in. "I heard Julie is your sister," Connor said with disgust. "Didn't you have a crush on her? You a sister fucker too, huh, brown boy?" I ran, and they chased. "Come on, boys, let's play hit the spick," Carson shouted out, and boys ran out at him from all over. The lights flickered on and off between the trees as I ran. "Let's fucking castrate him. Can't have him and his man-whore dad browning up our town," Carson said, and others laughed along with him. "Bad enough they let them kids live round here. Don't need them multiplying like rabbits." They became distant behind me. But then my mother showed up sitting in her recliner, empty beer bottles at her feet, mixed in with the branches and leaves, a cigarette in her hand. She flicked it at me as I walked by. "Make sure you wear long sleeves if you're going out in the sun. Otherwise you darken up and always look dirty." She chugged the last of her beer and held it up, signaling for me to get another. I ran past her, and she chucked a bottle. "I thought you were better than this. she slurred. You have that Mexican gangster blood in you, after all, just like your dad and grandfather. She waved her hands around. Couldn't have clean blood like me. You wouldn't be getting into so much trouble. The lights kept flickering, and I made it to the door between two trees. The door opened into my abuela's backyard. The smell of authentic Mexican and Puerto Rican food filled the air, mixing with the damp of night. Everything was bright, despite the darkness, and everyone talked in Spanish. A cousin called me over and asked, "Is it true you can't speak Spanish?" I nodded, looking down at the leaves. You really are a coconut, like my papa said. Brown on the outside, white on the inside. They all laughed. He doesn't even like pasteles, an uncle added in. That's what you get when your old man shacks up with a white woman. I ran from them, and their voices became twisted and inhumanly cruel. The false brightness disappeared, and I was in darkness again. The dancing light had come closer, silent and burning coldly. Something small crashed through the woods, towards me, and I groped for something to strike out at it with. I pulled a brittle branch from a tree and was ready to swing when I saw in the dull light the small ball of fluff that was Laddie. In all my running, he struggled to keep up. The small dog growled, and a voice seemed to come carried on the wind. Why do you keep running? The voice asked in a friendly whisper. I just want a friend. I didn't answer. Instead, I searched for the light briefly and saw that it was a little closer than before. I need no more friends, I said with adolescent defiance. If you had friends, why aren't they out here with you? The voice asked. Aren't you lonely? Instead of finishing, I turned and ran again, watching the light, making sure I wasn't heading towards it. Regardless of my feet getting wet and being sucked into mud, I kept running, watching the light and hearing whispers in the wind. Then, as if it passed behind a tree, it was gone. Dread and relief flooded me. My ghostly compass was gone, and now I had no reference for my location. My relief was short-lived, though. A few minutes later, I came to an inner field, one where the farmer that owned the land liked to bait his deer. I could see piles of corn and a salt lick in the dim glow of starlight. Old growth surrounded the open area. It was a little larger than a football field. With growing dread, I noticed on the other side, just within the wood line, the white-blue dancing flame. It didn't seem malicious, but it didn't seem friendly either. Maybe it wasn't the lantern flame of my real life, General Zaroff, but of an apathetic reaper waiting for me to break an ankle and die from thirst. I watched it, and Laddie panted quietly next to me, ignorant of what I was watching. The light didn't seem to illuminate anything around it. I couldn't make out trees, bushes, or the surrounding ground. A light without illumination. It seemed to glow only for itself. What made my stomach twist with dread was the fact that now it was so much closer. Then, as I watched it, something moved in front of the light, blocking it out for just a moment. It wasn't an animal, despite its strange, hunched shape. It was definitely walking on two legs. The only good thing was I knew exactly where I was, and at the far end of the field, there was a path that led to the cook's farm, which was only a half-mile from my mother's trailer. The bad thing was that as I walked, the light followed. It stayed parallel along the opposite side of the field. I couldn't take my eyes off of it. Every time it moved behind a tree, I hoped it was gone for good, but each time it emerged. The peepers peeped in differently, and somewhere far away, coyotes got a kill. I kept watching for the strange, hunched figure again, but it didn't appear. When I was nearly on the path, I stopped walking and ran. Laddie ran at my heels, excited about the change of pace and blissfully unaware of the threat behind us. I turned into the path and dared to look back, and the light was the closest it had been. I turned my eyes away, afraid that I would see, and ran down the ATV-worn path. My legs pumped fire as I ran through the cool summer night air. Fireflies blinked in discordant rhythms around me, their light a welcoming light, compared to the ghostly flame behind me. I turned to look back again, and the singular white-blue flame had split into 3 smaller ones, and they were close behind on the path. I ran harder than I had ever run. When people say they ran for their life, usually it's hyperbole. But this time, for me, it didn't feel hyperbolic. I felt that the ghostly light was impending doom, that my 14 short years were going to be over, that I was going to be missing, forever lost in the woods. The police don't do large search and rescues, not for little brown boys like me. Maybe the neighbors would look. I knew my dad would. I also knew that no one would miss me until at least late the next day, assuming my mother didn't get stuck for a double shift. Another day for my body to be torn to shreds by coyotes. I broke from the wood line into an open field, and my heart sank when I didn't see the silos on the horizon. It was the same field I just ran from, except now, dozens of lights danced in the tall grass. "Join us. We are all friends here." The soft voice called out from every direction at once. The white-blue flames swirled and danced around, not illuminating anything but themselves. I felt a coldness on the nape of my neck, and the dry hand on my shoulder. We are never alone. We all have each other here. I stood frozen as the dry hand groped me, and the smell of freshly churned dirt and rot filled my nose. I can't. I have to go home, I said, nervously like a child. You are home now. We won't let anyone hurt you. There were 3, no 4 hands on me now, all from behind, all as dry as old pine branches. That's more than you can say about your mother and father. We will be your family now. No, I whispered, unable to finish. If you say you can't again, I'll break your fucking legs. The voice gave up being friendly and turned dark and forceful. Then, I will bite off each of your fingers. Then you really won't be able to. I slowly walked away from the thing that had its hands on me, and it held me tighter. Its grip tightened, but its limbs felt brittle. The light stopped moving, as if to watch. Let go of me, I growled. Why would I do that? So you can go home and live like the rest of the trash in your family. The voice softened again and tried to pull me closer. More hands gripped me. Here you will be. I pulled away, and Laddie, who must have gotten lost and found his way back to me, grabbed onto one of its arms. You miserable spick! The creature yelled out. I ignored it and ran through the field, the lights parting for me like the grass. The creature continued to curse at me as I ran. Its voice became distant, and I entered the ATV path again. Streetlights lit up between the trees, and police sirens flashed behind me. He is resisting arrest, a voice shouted. If he was innocent, he wouldn't be running. Gun him down. Harsh flashes sent my shadow out ahead of me as they fired from behind. That Mexican gangster blood is going to get you into trouble, the disembodied voice of my mother said. Just tell them you're Italian, my father said. Everyone loves Italians these days. Going to darken up the neighborhood. People stood on either side of the street that I ran down now. His feet kicked up mud, and I slid and nearly lost balance. The police continued to shout as everyone else screamed slurs at me. The end of the path was in front of me. I could see it now. Stars between the trees. I turned back and saw several of the lights filling up the woods, and the strange multi-armed hunched shape silhouetted by the headlights of the cop car. It's not too late. You can turn around now and no one will punish you. It said in that fatherly voice, as smooth and warm as flannel. There is nothing for you out there. I ran for my life, for the second time this night. Laddie was at my heels carrying something in his mouth, but I didn't pay close attention. I broke through the wood line and saw familiar silos and barns. I nearly collapsed with relief. I turned to see the ghostly lights floating a short distance down the path. The hunched creature lurked in the shadow, quiet now, still watching. I would have yelled something obscene if I wasn't out of breath. Instead, I watched the lights float and dance around before bouncing back into the woods. The hunched thing waited, staring, shrouded in darkness. I stared into the dark between the trees for a long time, watching the lights try to taunt me into following them again. The cold nose of Laddie nudging my arm broke my trance. He still had something in his mouth. I pulled it out, and the feeling of its dryness startled me. It felt like that thing's hand, but it was only a tree branch. I looked back up to the hunched figure, but it was no longer there. I inspected the strange branch. It was unusual in its shape. It resembled an arm and hand. One of the finger-like branches at the end bent slightly, and I felt it shift in my arm. I snapped it over my knee and tossed it into the grass. After the dreaded woods, I walked to the road at an angle, not wanting to turn my back on the woods again. The lights stayed parallel to me for a while, but they eventually faded into the dark. Either they became disinterested, or I couldn't see them through the thick underbrush. By the time I got to the road, there was no sign of the ghostly lights. After that night, I avoided the woods, especially near dark. Occasionally, years later, I would still see those lights in the woods, or what I thought was them. I never felt the urge to follow, and I never whistled in or near the woods, ever again. What did you think of this terrific short horror story? Comment or email redtreehousepod@gmail.com. A huge shout out to Otero for submitting it. It's always a privilege to narrate these original stories on the show. As we turn down the lights on this episode, make plans to join me next time as we continue our celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month. I'm your host, Will. Thanks for joining me in the Red Treehouse.